Discrimination in Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go. I'm going to be exploring how Ishiguro uses a dystopian setting as a metaphor for discrimination, prejudice, and marginalization. I'm going to look at this idea of otherness, here defined by Jean-François Zazac. Otherness is due less to the difference of the other than to the point of view and the discourse of the person who perceives the other as such. Opposing us, the self, and them, the other is to choose a criterion that allows humanity to be divided into two groups, one that embodies the norm and whose identity is valued, and another that is defined by its faults, devalued and susceptible to discrimination. Building on this concept, in Never Let Me Go, clones, or students, as they're described, are othered. They are treated as alien and unnatural, and a sense of them and us is presented. These students are labelled by society as donors and carers. These names strip them of their identity and individualism, a trope seen in other dystopian works such as The Handmaid's Tale, maintaining control over them and contributing to their othering. The disparity between the outside people and the clones is legitimised by a society that perpetuates discrimination and allows their organs to be harvested, a form of human trafficking, simply because they do not fit the standards of society. This is normalised in the novel much like real-life events were, such as segregation and even slavery. Things like colonialism were based upon who was considered human and who was not. In this reinvented type of slavery, the students are commodities, objects of exploitation for the privileged, and this is normalised in Ishiguro's world, presenting the ramifications of ignorantly treating the lives of others as resources and violating other human rights. Let's look at this first extract. The outside people, in this example, Madame, are repulsed by the clones, these other creations that have no value as individuals or as human beings. Even this fear of spiders is a socially and culturally constructed concept. Like the clones, they are non-human and thus are other. Now let's look at the second quotation. The truth of the clones' lives is distorted and controlled, and psychological manipulation is used by the Guardians so that the students are never fully aware of the oppression and inequality they will be subjected to. However, from a young age, they have always been aware that they are the other in society. The motif of the office in the novel serves to highlight the segregation of the clones. The text here describes our mundane, what is normal for us readers and the non-clones in the novel. This office setting, a typical workplace, is fascinating to the clones, something they've only heard about and seen in magazines, presenting their isolation and alienation from the rest of society. And we can see this in the ironic last line of this extract. It looked like a smart, cosy, self-contained world. This is what Hailsham is to the students. However, there are other people in the world, like the clones, who would not have been privileged to see this luxury. For example, refugees, the homeless, and other marginalised figures. Like the clones, these groups are dehumanised by society and by people in power. A similar idea is illustrated through Miss Emily, who says, "People did their best not to think about you. And if they did, they tried to convince themselves you weren't really like us, that you were less than human." Here, the segregation and dehumanisation of certain social groups is explained, that humans dislike things that are different to them, and don't fit into their standards of humanness. Though it is never explicitly mentioned that the characters in the book are white, readers may assume this. However, it is possible to read the characters as belonging to other ethnicities. The students are reduced to their organs and are oppressed, and in this they become reflective of ethnic minorities and any other marginalised figure or group in society. They are seen as other, subjected to prejudice and racism, and are devalued in comparison to white Eurocentric standards of what makes a human. This comes from the idea of liberal humanism. It is significant to note that the clones are modelled from undesirables of society. A quote here: junkies, prostitutes, winos, tramps, convicts maybe, just so long as they aren't psychos. These groups are also dehumanised and demonised, reflecting the attitudes of society towards those that don't fit their narrative and standards. This interpretation is strengthened by the fact that 40% of ethnic minorities are in poverty in the UK, and are more likely to experience these realities that Kazuo presents.
The structure of the novel manipulates the reader into assuming the students have been conceived naturally, so that we don't initially question this idea of their humanness until the fact that they are clones is revealed later in the novel. As such, the fact that they have to prove they have a soul is shocking to the reader, who has, up until now, been witnesses to the evidence of just how human these children are through Catherine's memories. The students are perhaps more human than the vague they mentioned in the novel, those in power who allow for these human rights violations to exist, and those who stand by and allow it to happen. And to conclude my presentation, I'm going to finish on this image. This is an image of a train from the Holocaust. Jewish people were considered undesirable, just like the clones, just like ethnic minorities and homeless people and sex workers. Over 7 million deaths were the consequences of the Holocaust. Is Kazuo suggesting we are on the path to repeat such an event?